Okay, thank you, Dave. And good evening, or depending on time zone, good morning, good afternoon to all of you. To see some familiar names on the list. It's always nice to say hello to you again. Now, I want to talk a bit about doing upgrades. We can't do a complete upgrade, it will take too long, but we can go through some of the basic steps. Now, what do you upgrade to? Well, you want to be on the terminal release. That means 19C. Right. Plus, of course, the latest RU release update. Now, when Oracle change them, they've been through PSUs and CPUs and SPUs and bundle patches and all the rest of it. Now we have RUs, release updates, and of course, release update revisions, RURs. So these are the quarterly updates you're meant to apply. That are large sets of dozens, perhaps hundreds of patches, which are all integration tested, that you apply as a unit. And theoretically, you always apply them as they're released every quarter. Many people delay 3 months and apply the RUR a quarter later, but whatever. You need to be on 19C plus, ideally, the latest RU. Or, of course, 11.204, if for some reason really can't be. But we won't talk about that today. So you want to upgrade to 19C. There's no point in anything less. There have been some stupid issues with some third-party products saying they are certified against 18 but not against 19 and so on. Well, if you have a third-party product and the vendor says you can't go to 19, well, you can't. But typically that does tend to show their ignorance of the Oracle environment. Because remember, as Dave said earlier, 19C is just 12.203. 18C is just 12.202. So if a product works against 12.202, it's going to work against 12.203. Yeah, so when people say, oh, we haven't certified against 19C, you need to question if they really understand what's going on with these versions. But of course, if your software vendor won't let you upgrade, well, you can't upgrade. Let's assume you're going to 19C. Direct upgrade from the terminal release of 11G or from 12.102, which is the terminal release of 12C release 1, or from 12.201 or 18. So basically from any of the currently supported versions that are still in extended support, premier support or extended support, you can upgrade straight to 19. If you're on something older, maybe you're for some reason on 11.203 or 12.101, then you're in trouble. And it's got to be a two-stage upgrade. It's got to be a two-stage upgrade. You have to upgrade to one of these releases that is still in full support, extended or premier, and then upgrade to 19. There is always export-import as a possibility. And export-import should work between any release. Theoretically, you could use a data bump export from release 10 and import it straight into 19. You could even use a legacy EXP export from release 8i or release 9i and use IMP to import it into release 19. So export-import should be completely platform independent. But let's assume that you're on one of these currently supported versions, terminal release of 11G, or one of these that's still in extended or premier support. Oops. Well, take care. There are problems, believe me. In an ideal world, you would upgrade and nothing would change. It would be nothing but good. Well, I think we all know, and we're all experienced DBAs here from all the names I recognised, and we know that upgrades never go quite that smoothly. Now, what sort of problems? We've done quite a few upgrades now, through a few releases to 19 now. We've done on various platforms. And I've come across, these are just 3 issues that I come across particularly frequently. You've got to watch your SQLnet. I'm sorry, I'm showing my age there. I should have said OracleNet. You've got to watch your OracleNet and whether your client tools are going to be compatible. Now, with regard to checking that out in advance, well, you can just upgrade and see if things work. But that's perhaps not the ideal system. But Oracle does publish the SQLnet compatibility matrix. And that is this document here. If you want to jot down the number. Right, client-server interoperability support matrix, different Oracle versions. Doc ID 207.303.1. Right, gets updated quite frequently. Last update was only a few days ago. And this is supposed to tell you what release of the clients will work with which release of the server in this little matrix. You've got to take it with a big dose of salt. But if you get an idea of what's going on, let's assume we're going to 19. Well, if your server version is 19, a 19C client's no problem, 18C client no problem, 12.2 client no problem, 12.1 clients, yes, provided you've got extended support, 11.2 clients, 11G, yes, if you've got extended support. For anything older, according to this document, you won't be able to talk to a 19C database. Now, that isn't necessarily true. What you have to hang on to is that Oracle always promises SQLnet compatibility through two major releases. So a release 9 client should be able to talk to release 11. A release 10 client should be able to talk to release 12. And that you can just about see coming through. Release 10 client should be able, well, to support to, should be able to talk to these things. It was a supported combination. However, that mechanism of supporting upgrades through two releases for SQLnet fell apart when they changed the numbering convention. It's all a bit confusing now. But you don't have to be too downhearted. If you really do have 10G type clients and you want to upgrade to 19, you may be able to do it. It is, for example, possible to have an 8i client talk to a 12C database. And according to this matrix, that's impossible. So just because it isn't supported and never was supported, don't be downhearted. Trust me, an 8i client can talk to 12C. Oracle had to do that because of eBusiness Suite. A lot of old eBiz, there were an awful lot of old eBiz applications out there running eBiz version 11, 11.5.2, or 11.5, later 11.5 releases of eBiz. And the client tools there use the 8i libraries, the 8i Oracle Net libraries. And yet you are permitted to upgrade your eBiz database to release 12. So clearly an 8i client for, say, forms and eBiz can talk to a 12C database. But there's a fair bit of mucking about you have to do to make it work. And are you supported? Well, Oracle will say you're only supported if you're using EBS. So just a word of warning, you've got to watch your SQLnet versions, but you don't need to take this matrix too seriously. There may well be ways that we can make older clients work. Yeah, there's some examples of some of the errors, and you can often work around them. So that's one major issue, SQLnet incompatibilities. Security problems, there are many security changes as you go up through the releases. And older clients will often have problems with the security features that are enabled by default in the latest versions of the database. I do say they are enabled by default, which is sometimes a bit disconcerting. And you may end up, after a default, a standard installation or creation of a database, have to switch off various facilities before they will actually work. If you look at an 11G, here's an 11G database here, sorry, 11G, 19C database here. And if you look at the security related parameters, show parameters sec. Case sensitive logons are now enabled. Well, what if you have a 10G client that can't do case sensitive logins? Well, you're going to get some very bizarre results because of that, unless you set that to false. But if you do set that to false, well, maybe your auditors are going to cause other problems there. Some other things, parameters that have changed with the current release of 19.3, well, current release 19C with patch set 3. So you may simply find that older clients can't log on because of simple parameter settings, or it may be more complicated than that. Undoubtedly, the security issues that I've had most problems with have been with access to external systems. Nowadays, more and more, we find developers are writing distributed applications. We do a lot of work with Apex, and certainly our Apex developers all the time are writing an application that doesn't just run within the database. It makes calls to an external RESTful service, perhaps, to do a bit of the work. There are any number of cases nowadays where developers invoke external facilities to do a bit of the work for them, typically by going to web services. You may well find that calling a web service that works in release 12.1 all of a sudden stops working in release 12.2, or it works in 12.2, upgrade the database to 19, and it stops working. And it's all to do with Oracle's security enhancements. One particular problem, well, I've had to deal with a few times, and you must be aware of this when you upgrade, is to do with the way Oracle has changed the use of secure sockets digital certificates. Secure sockets digital certificates. For example, if you look at, here's some docs here. This is the documentation page for 121, 12.1, and 12.1, we see that there is a package called, oops, get that through, not a pack within the package, my apologies. Yep, Apex Web Service. I won't come to Apex Web Service first, actually. Yes, that will do nicely. This is 12.1 Apex Web Service. And if you look at the packages here, the procedures here, the one that will make request, so this is typically how an Apex programmer would call an external service. He will use this function saying, go to that URL, which will be HTTPS, blah, 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 give it all this lot. And there's the wallet where we are storing our trusted certificates. Because unlike a browser, Oracle doesn't have preloaded certificates. So we're going to go there, get that site's certificate, and compare it with what we've got in there. And if it works, great. That call's going to fail many times following an upgrade to the current release. Why? It's because of Oracle improving security. Go to oracle.com. Right. I've gone to oracle.com and I'm using secure sockets, but look at the certificate Oracle is sending me. The certificate is not for oracle.com, it's for www-cs-01.oracle.com. And many people do this. Subject alternative names kick in, wildcard certificates. So what has happened is I asked for one address and the site is telling me it's somewhere else. Current release of the database will not accept that. Your application will fail if you try to make a call to the Oracle website. And that's because this make request, which is 121 documentation, doesn't have what you see in the 19.2 documentation. When we go to the 19.2 documentation, you'll see that current release, this is the Apex documentation, but it's the same thing. You'll see that they've enhanced the package. Make request, you've got the same give it a URL, compare the page you get back, or compare the wallets you get back with the wallets you've got stored there, but there's an extra argument. In the current release, you can tell your application what the underlying name in the certificate is, and that will allow your application to accept it. Without that, your application will fail. And there are many other cases where that happens, many other cases. You'll find, even if you're not using Apex, you'll be doing the same thing with UTL HTTP. Well, this is a release 19 database. UTL HTTP has function request. It's got that, and that allows you to work around the problem. Earlier releases won't. So earlier releases wouldn't make these checks. Current releases will fail if certificates don't match. Last point on security, there's also the issue of encryption algorithms. Oracle keeps changing the encryption algorithms that each release supports. The elliptical curve cryptography algorithms that are used, for instance. And again, if you're talking to other websites and they're using encryption algorithms that are a bit too new for your release of the products, you'll find it's not going to work. And oddly enough, as you upgrade, there may be support for some older algorithms get removed. So again, things that used to work stop working after upgrade. Very difficult. It's very difficult to test all these things in advance. But the worst one is probably optimizer changes. And we've all done upgrades. We know what happens. You upgrade your database, and 90% of your SQLs run the same as they did before. 9% of them run better than they did before, and 1% of them performance drops through the floor. And if you have a SQL in that 1% that's important, you're in big trouble. And it can be quite a lot of tuning and hacking to force the optimizer to run it the way it should be run best. I don't mean just putting in a couple of hints. Worse still, we've had code failures with optimizer with upgrades. And it may well be that you get errors, Aura 600s or whatever, following upgrade, or incorrect results. One of our clients a month or two ago actually was getting incorrect results from a query. A whole bunch of rows are being missed out following the upgrade. Well, you dive into what the execution plans are, what the optimizer is doing, and in most cases, I've found that the optimizer is being too clever. It's making some transformations, rewriting SQLs in ways it didn't do before. And maybe some of those rewrites are a bit buggy. But by rewriting, adjusting the SQL, tuning it to avoid the optimizer new features, okay, you'll get the correct results if it was actually a bug, and maybe you can get back to the previous performance as well. So optimizer change is very difficult. It isn't just performance, remember, it may be incorrect results. We've seen that twice in the last couple of months. So be careful with upgrades. But once you've decided it's going to be okay, you do it. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty straightforward. Easy for me to say that, isn't it? But it is. It's reasonably straightforward. So the method is install and patch a new Oracle home. That's obvious. Depending on what releases you've been working with, you may be surprised by the way you install the Oracle home. It's now an image-based installation. You download a zip file and you unzip it into the Oracle home. It makes the installation quicker and simpler. It's not so much work. You don't have to stage the software the way we always used to. So unzip it to install the home and apply your latest RU, or the one before last, if you're nervous of the latest. Now, I've got a database ready and waiting, and I've configured a couple of shell scripts. So I've got this database, which I've called ORCLB. Now, ORCLB is an absolutely ordinary 11204 database. Nothing special about it at all. And that I'm going to upgrade. I won't do the complete upgrade now. We don't have enough time, but at least we can get it going. So, copy over your SQLnet files, because there's a compatibility issue here. Your new 19C listener will be able to connect your 11G clients to your 11G databases. It'll be able to connect your 10G clients to your 11G databases. However, the 11G listener will not be able to connect clients to a 12C database or a 19C database. So you always need to be running the latest version of the listener. So that's your first step. Configure a new listener running off the new home, copy over listener.aura to all your static registrations are there, and then shut down your 12C listener. That's your first step. And that you can do weeks in advance. Get onto the latest listener. I've never heard of any bugs, any problems with running off a 19C listener when you have older versions of the database. Never. Now, then you've got to copy over your parameter file and your password file from the 11G home to the 19C home. Now, I've got a couple of scripts of variables. I'm setting up a couple of variables here. I've got a variable called OH Oracle Home 11G, pointing to my 11G home, and I've got a variable OH19C, pointing to my newly installed and patched, well, not patched, but newly installed 19C home. So that's just two variables pointing to the old and new home. Copy over my parameter file. Right. Copy the 11G database SP file, orclb.aura, to the new home. Copy the password file over. So all this you can do a long time in advance. Get the password file across. Then Oracle provides a pre-upgrade tool, the pre-upgrade tool. Now that is a little utility that's meant to tell you whether the upgrade is going to be successful. It's shipped as a jar file. It's a jar file. And if you look at it, the Java file is shipped in the new Oracle home. So dir, new Oracle home, rdvmsadmin, pre-upgrade.jar, and there it is, less than a megabyte. It's just a Java archive. And again, in 19, they've changed the way you run the pre-upgrade tool, which is why I did want to just demonstrate this. It was different in earlier releases. And to run it, you connect to the existing home and set. So I am currently connected to my 11G home and my Oracle SID. Ooh, a spelling mistake there. How do we do that? That's Oracle SID equals ORCLB. My Oracle SID is set to the 11G database. And just to check, SQL plus minus V. Yes, 11G all the way. But then you run the jar file from the new home. So connect your environment to the 11G home, and then Java, the jar file from the 19C home. And this doesn't take too long. It's inspecting the data dictionary to see what's going on. It's checking your patch levels. It's checking out what the current database actually is. And it'll produce a report, which can be pretty interesting, full of advice about what you need to do, about whether the upgrade should in fact succeed, and if there's a problem, if there are problems, what you need to do about it. I should emphasize, as you go, there's zero downtime at this stage. All this is done while your current system is still live. Right, so it's run, doesn't take long. It produces a log file, and it produces a couple of SQL scripts. So we'll start with this and see what it's got to say. And here you may be prepared to see some horrific problems. In this case, it shouldn't be too bad. Let me increase the font on view, zoom, and give it one more. Right, so this was generated just now. And we see name the database and so on. This is also with multi-tenant, if that were relevant, which doesn't apply to 11G. It checks out what you've got installed and what it's going to upgrade. And then it comes to the problems. Required actions. Got to empty my recycle bin. Okay, fair enough. Apparently I've got something in the recycle bin. And Oracle will not upgrade unless your recycle bin is empty. Let's do a quick check and see if it's correct. I always like to do reality checks on these things. Yes, I've got 2 objects in the recycle bin. Okay, let's get rid of it. So purge your recycle bin. I wasn't expecting this. My DB recovery file dest isn't big enough apparently. Show parameter recovery. No, it wants my recovery destination to be bigger, to be at least that. Okay, also system set. And make it say 6G, right. So those are the only 2 things, because it says I must do. Then there's some advice, some other things that are optional, but you ought to do anyway. I'll skip over these. Wants that parameter to be higher. Enterprise Manager is going to be removed. Causes a bit of heartache for some people that the Enterprise Manager database console is gone once you upgrade from 11.2, so that will get stripped out during the upgrade. If you do it before the upgrade, it makes it faster. OLAP catalog goes. I have a suspicion that Oracle wants to get rid of all of OLAP. And I suspect they want you to use Oracle Analytics, preferably the Oracle Analytics Cloud instead of OLAP. You can't quote me on that, but I think there's a bit of a de-emphasis of OLAP as we're going through later releases, and the catalog is indeed de-supported from 12 onwards. Apex is no longer upgraded by a database upgrade. You must do that manually, and quite right too. And then there's some stuff, materialized view business, that's a matter of performance, and analyze data dictionary and so on. But my database should now be ready to upgrade. I'm not going to do the complete upgrade. We won't have time, but at least I'll get it started and show you what it will do with one I did earlier. So, well, better recopy my parameter file because I changed that parameter for the DB recovery file test. Just copy that over again. Copy my SB file across to the 19C home again. Right, okay. Now, what do we do next? We upgrade the database. Do it with the GUI or do it with the shell scripts. The GUI is a bit slower. There are more steps involved. It does things you can skip or do beforehand. You know, for instance, gathering, analyzing the data dictionary and things. So things you can do faster before the downtime begins. So I would normally do it by running the shell scripts, but there's nothing wrong. Use the DBUA if you've got the time. It takes about 40 odd minutes. You know, there are, of course, variations depending on what's installed in your platform, but you want to allow 40-45 minutes is typically what it will take. So, how do I run that shell script? Right. Well, you begin with the shutdown of the database. So your downtime begins now. SQL+/assistDBA shutdown. Right. Then, because this is Windows, I'll have to do another step. Oh, that doesn't go. I can use the same window. Still connected to the 11G home. I'm going to have to stop the Windows service under which the instance is running. Let's stop. And then use the ORADIM utility to remove the Windows service. That's ripping out the Windows service for the instance ORCLB. Then I need to connect to my 19C home. So my downtime began here. Connect to the 19C home. That shell script will set my variables to the 19C home there. Just check I am indeed in the right one. SQL+ -v. Yes, I'm connected to the 19C home. I'm going to create my new Windows service, ORADIM -new -sid ORCLB. And within my session, I'll just set my Oracle SID. By the way, I'm not watching chats or questions at all. So I'm not ignoring you because I'm being rude. I'm ignoring you because I'm not looking at the window, at the chat window. And I'll rely on Dave to interrupt if there's something we should be discussing.
Yeah, thanks, John. I've been able to answer some of the questions as we go here. You're gonna do about 5 minutes, and then I got a few questions for you that I'm gonna pass over to you.
Okay. The utility we use is in Oracle Home bin, and the new script is dbupgrade.cmd, or of course the shell script under Linux. Now, start up the database. But we start it up in upgrade mode. Start up, upgrade. As far as I know, there's never been complete documentation of what startup upgrade actually does. My own interpretation of it, from attempting to reverse engineer it, is it lets you run a database with an inconsistent data dictionary. That's my understanding of it. Because while you're doing an upgrade, you're running all sorts of scripts against numerous objects in the data dictionary, and there will be any number of incompatibilities. And as long as you're in upgrade mode, the Oracle instance is prepared to let the database instance continue run. The instance is prepared to continue running, even though it's all messed up with different components being at different versions. Now, that's my understanding of what's going on, but maybe there's more to it than that. The other thing upgrade does is it enables restricted session. So even though we assume at this point that your listener is running, your end users could be attempting to log on, but assuming that you haven't granted them restricted session, your database is protected during this process. So let's just confirm the situation. So we are now opening an 11G database with a 19C instance. So we've got that massive incompatibility between the instance and the data dictionary. It's open read-write, but because of the upgrade mode, we see that restricted session and the status is open migrate. Right. Then we just run the script, which is just db upgrade.cmd, and let it get on with it. Now that's going to take about 40 minutes. So I have no intention of watching the paint dry for 40 minutes. I want to get on with things. What you will see at the end of it is it will produce this log file. And the log file will show you what it did. So this is one I did earlier. It upgrades everything, switches off the OLAP catalog note, remember, because that isn't supported in current release. And it tells you how long it took. There's more output here. There's another log file which gives you fuller information. It goes through a total of 107 steps. 107 steps. And it tells you, and this is what you'll see on the screen as the upgrade progresses. And there are various stages where it seems to get stuck and you give up. But don't give up. They're just slow stages. There are some points. Java is always a slow one. They take a long time. And at the end of the line, you'll find it's been done, and typically 45 minutes or so, depending on various circumstances. And then run any post-upgrade fix-ups. Well, in my case, there weren't any post-upgrade fix-ups, but the pre-upgrade information tool would tell you anything that needs to be done. And then you open your database. After that, you run utlrp and all the standard stuff to get the database usable. So that's doing an upgrade. Just a very brief mention, if you can't spend 45 minutes, how long does it really take? 45 minutes is the absolute minimum. We normally ask clients for 2 hours, a 2-hour window, but say that 4 hours is nice. Then you can do everything slowly, think about it all twice before you do it and so on. So 2 hours is what we would normally ask for. If you can't stand that, you can do zero downtime, virtually zero downtime, via logical standby. There are some issues with unsupported, so I'm not going to demonstrate any of this. The logical standby does have issues with unsupported objects. There are some tables that can't be handled. I found workarounds for most of them. For example, officially, the transient logical standby won't work if your tables, if you're on a 12C database already, and you have a table with an identity column. This mechanism won't work. I can make it work. There are issues with some other object types. Maybe we can make it work even so. So bear in mind, you may find when you look at the docs that this mechanism won't work for you. It may well be possible to make it work anyway. There's a script you can look at, which Oracle provides, which is very useful. If you look at that, I'll just give you the article and point it to you for future research. But if you look at this article here, you will find documents, Oracle 11G data guard, database rolling upgrade shell script, doc ID, write it down, 949.322.1. And this says you can use a script that they provide that you download, the physru v3 script, and that script will automate the process of upgrade via logical standby. It isn't properly documented, but it certainly works. With the client the other day, we raised a TAR with Oracle to check. It will definitely work for upgrading 12.1 to 19C. Oracle confirmed it. So it works, but the documentation is weak. It's a very clever routine, and the downtime for the upgrade can be double-digit seconds, maybe even under a minute for downtime. That's the physru routine. Doc ID 949.322.1. There's also DBMS rolling. DBMS rolling, you must already be on 12. It can't upgrade you from 11, whereas FizzRU can. FizzRU can take 11 to 19. DBMS rolling, you must be on 12 point something. But what that can do, it's even cleverer than the script. And it can handle a lot of objects with FizzRU you have to hack. Not hack, you have to be clever with to make FizzRU work. DBMS rolling is more sophisticated. The catch, you need active data guard licenses. Active data guard. There's the doc ID, rolling upgrade using DBMS rolling, complete reference. Doc ID 2086512.1. Again, like the FizzRU script, it's the same mechanism via logical standby. Maybe double-digit seconds for downtime. Right. Having done that, there's a load of new features. The bad news is that an awful lot of them are available only on engineered systems. An awful lot of them are available only on OCI. And many of them require both Exadata and OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So a lot of new features you won't get for your on-premises systems. For instance, the autonomous stuff. It's a shame, but that's the way it is. But
John?
Many of them are. Yes.
Yeah, let's turn to some of the questions and get through those. For the bit that we haven't covered, we'll try to put it in the tutorial we'll create from this. You'll get an email with a link to the tutorial, and we'll try to get that covered there. John, let me throw some questions at you. What's the recommended way to upgrade from 12 to 18 to 19 for databases with TDE and physical standby in place, data guard?
Data guard, I've just been describing. No, sorry, let me take it slowly. TDE, copy your wallets over, shouldn't be any difference. The wallets should be compatible. In fact, you may not even need to copy them over. What you will find when you get up to release 18 and 19 is you might want to change the way you manage your wallets. In release 19, there's a much cleverer way to do wallets than any other release. Specifically, in release 19, you can control the location of your wallets by setting a parameter. You've got the SSL wallets and the wallet root parameters. Much, much better way of doing it with regards to TTE. So yes, you can upgrade with TDE, no problem, but you'll want to improve it afterwards. As for, what was the second part of the question, Dave?
What point would it make sense to change from non-CDB to multi-tenant?
Oh, right. I would have done it already. We decided within SkillBuilders to convert to multi-tenant when we upgraded to 12.2. And we've been encouraging our clients to do that as well. We haven't had 100% success rates by any means, but many people have followed what we did, convert to multi-tenant when you go to 12.2. That leads us on to, if you haven't done it already, we'd do it pretty soon afterwards. And that will bring us, and we'll return to that in a couple of slides' time, in fact.
Great. Let's see, Golden Gate 19C work with Golden Gate 12.2?
Yes, it will. Coming to the next slide there. Things that are gone, but you mentioned Golden Gate. If you're doing replication, Golden Gate is almost your only option once you upgrade. Streams is deprecated and doesn't work in 19. The old advanced replication is gone as well. So your only real way to replicate is with Golden Gate. Xstreams is the alternative. And Xstreams is syntactically identical to the old streams, but guess what? It requires Golden Gate licenses. So Golden Gate will work between all these releases, as long as you've got SQLnet compatibility. In fact, I'm not even sure, no, you don't even need SQLnet compatibility. Golden Gate will be no problem. And if you're relying heavily on replication, you may be forced to start using it.
20C, John. What's the status of 20C?
Oh, you can get a cloud instance of it already, I think. But there's nothing on premise or anything.
Okay, so you're upgrading to 19.3. Does 19.3 have any required patch view applied afterward?
Yes, just the normal quarterly RUs. The last one of which, of course, came out about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, so there's an article, an MOS doc, that really explains the difference between the PSUs and the RUs in great detail. Yeah, you're shifting to RUs in general sense, but check out the article that I'm posting and the answers to several questions here. John, where did you get the DB upgrade script when you did the upgrade?
It's provided.
Yeah.
That script is just provided in your, once you get to 19, it's provided in your Oracle Home. Oracle Home /bin.
So upgrade typically wants to upgrade time zone files for little scripts in the RDBMS admin folder. I guess that's more of a point about time zone files rather than a question.
Yep. You'll see that your pre-upgrade tool will tell you if you need to upgrade your time zone files. And if you do need to upgrade them, it will give you the detail of how to do it as the post-upgrade steps.
Good. So does the duration of the upgrade depend on the size of the data dictionary or the size of the database?
I don't think it depends on either. I think it depends on what components you've got installed. Remember, an upgrade doesn't really touch user data at all. It's only going to be, all you're doing with an upgrade is recreating and adjusting various Oracle supplied objects. If you think of it like that, the user data within the database, the user defined objects in the data dictionary aren't that significant. I've just found it's typically 40 odd minutes, and there isn't that much variation.
Situation here, we have a number of 11.204 databases with patch level Q1 2019. So we cannot go to a higher patch level anymore with this DB version unless we go to 19C. Is this correct?
11.204 is your terminal release. You can keep applying your quarterly, well, they aren't called RUs with 11G, are they? You can keep applying your quarterly PSUs, and they will be existing as long as 11G is in extended support, which is what, the end of this year. So you've got to do it. You've got to do the upgrade. You're okay for another 9 months. And given the amount of time you want to spend planning an upgrade, that probably means you need to start planning it now. But you will be getting the security patches and so on until the end of this year.
So the multi-tenant requires a license, is this correct? And,
yes and no. Let's deal with that straight away. Oh, this was the next slide. Advanced replication, I mentioned that's gone. Multimedia is gone. Multi-tenant is licensed in Enterprise Edition as an extra. However, once you get to 19, you can have 3 PDBs, user-created PDBs, in any edition. So in effect, they partially de-license multi-tenants. So in Enterprise Edition, without the option, Standard Edition, you can run multi-tenants with 3 PDBs. And that's the classic, so you can have your classic combination of 3 containers, dev, test, and prod. Very nice reason to push the upgrade, by the way, as once you go to multi-tenants, so many things become so much easier. And incidentally, in 20C, there's no option.